Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
It's got Star Trek. Episode 79. Voyager, Season 6, Episodes 11 and 17. Fairhaven and Spirit Folk.
They say when the sun goes down, the king of the fairies reclaims the castle.
Maybe he'll invite us to supper.
Oh, you'll be dining alone without me. One taste of the fairies' banquet, and you'll never return to this world.
Oh, don't tell me you believe those stories.
Believe? No. But I do respect them. Can I ask you something, Katie?
Please?
Have you a man waiting for you at home?
No.
Are you looking for one?
Why? Do you have somebody?
In Fairhaven? Not unless you fancy a pig farmer.
Oh, not my type.
Or what about a barkeep who reads poetry in strange places?
So in honor of our Irish-type episodes, there's Irish whiskeys that we're drinking here.
Yes.
We could name them, I guess, for some product placement, I guess, if we wanted to. I don't know.
If it was not already apparent, we're doing something a little different this evening, where we've traveled to Fairhaven, to the pub.
Fairhaven.
What was the name of the pub?
It was called like the Thistle and
The Harp and Sissel.
no, it was called like the Ox and Lamb or something.
No, wasn't that where that was where Neelix?
Oh, was that like the tavern or something?
I think that was the tavern.
Okay, I forget where the.
This is the one thing I didn't write down was the name.
That was Neelix's place. Right?
It was the harp and the harp and the harp.
Harp and something.
The fairy and the harp. All right. Well,
it doesn't matter.
Well, you guys can you all can write in and
set
let us know.
Straight.
Write in and set us straight, which is one of our new our new regular segments.
Where do you guys get
Set us straight. And speaking of segments and regular segments, you are indeed, as the introduction would have indicated, and as the title of the podcast you clicked on would have indicated, you are listening to the It's Got Star Trek podcast. And this week we will be discussing two Star Trek Voyager episodes, Fairhaven and Spirit Folk.
Because they're related. It's a story arc.
It's a theme.
And somehow it's like in the same. It's like in the same season, just a few episodes apart.
Yeah, it's weird. I know. By the way, Dan is still on assignment. He was out last week, and he's still on assignment this week, but he'll be back with us real soon.
Yeah, hopefully maybe next week.
Who knows? But whenever he's finished doing whatever his secret business is, so. The whole Fairhaven and Spirit Folk thing, I guess we'll get it out of the way right up here at the front, at the top of the show. Both of these episodes frequently come up on lists of the worst Star Trek Voyager episodes, which I find, I don't know about you, Jesse, I find it a little perplexing because I found these to be totally charming episodes. They're a little fluffy or whatever, but there's character development, the story's cute,
there's not that much Neelix.
There's not too much Neelix if you're, for those many folks out there who are not that into
it's just enough
Neelix.
to work. It was,
Yeah, they just to have some weird.
Like a line that was all right.
What was the joke? I think it was in Spirit Folk, and we will try to go through these episodes in some form of order, but they will blend together because they're already blending together in my mind.
Yeah.
But there was something about Neelix looking. Was it he looked like a leprechaun?
He does. Yeah, he definitely looks like a leprechaun. They're like, this guy definitely looks like a leprechaun.
Which brings up this bizarre. Just we need to discuss before diving into these episodes this strange obsession that Star Trek seems to have with the Irish.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Because you've got Kirk's. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Kirk's bully that was in the episode where the planet was manifesting, basically not hallucinations, they were manifesting things for them to be entertained.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
And at one point Kirk has to like, he's just being harassed by, I guess, the guy who was his bully in Starfleet Academy.
Oh, yeah, right.
And he was, as I recall, sort of a weirdly stereotypical Irish fellow. And then there's the TNG episode. And, and unfortunately tonight, as Jesse mentioned earlier, we are enjoying some Irish whiskeys while we're here at the Harp and Thistle pub in Fairhaven. and it's clouding our memories.
Yeah.
This is a public service announcement that one should enjoy their Irish whiskeys in moderation and ideally after they record the podcast.
Yeah, but
But
we'll see how it goes.
And for those who are interested, we're enjoying Jameson Caskmate's IPA edition. It was just too weird to pass up, and it's pretty tasty.
That one's recommended.
The other thing they brought to the table here, we have a lovely waiter tonight. He brought to the table Redbreast, which is your really kind of nice 12-year aged Irish whiskey. So,
and I got a cask of Bushmills I brought from my house.
And so Jesse's got some Bushmills. So we're covering as many bases as we could.
When Michael Sullivan decides he's not going to give us any more whiskey.
Yeah, within the constraints of our podcast budget, this is what we could manage. So, and the plane tickets to Ireland alone to visit Fairhaven took out most of the budget for the next 6 months for the podcast. So production quality might be a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Moving forward. Anyway, back to Fairhaven. The thing about these 2 episodes is they introduce this world, and it appears to be that they were trying to go for something kind of like Vic Fontaine's lounge in Deep Space Nine, where it was a place where crew could go hang out and chill, right?
Because they don't need any adventures. They're lost in the friggin' Delta Quadrant.
The adventure is getting home.
They're having they might not ever get home, so they need something where it's just there's not a dragon in the castle. It's just this village where there's people
now
being. Like, I don't know, it's like some kind of turn of the century Irish country village.
It's a made up, nonsensical.
It's made up,
and
totally.
we'll get back to, because we already broached this topic of this obsession with the Irish stuff that you see in Star Trek, because the before I got sidetracked by my discussion of the whiskeys, the TNG episode where they have the what was it, up the long ladder, where the. I mean, that's offensive. I mean, I don't know if it's. I'm not Irish, so forgive me. I'm not speaking for Irish folks, certainly, but it seemed offensive to me. The stereotypes they were playing with there seemed problematic, and it seemed kind of like they picked those people to be like, well, we're allowed to make fun of the Irish still. So let's make them look completely ridiculous.
You're not Irish, but you have most of the Ireland in your name.
I do. Yeah, my name is very, very Irish. Patty Christopher Ireland is my actual name, but yeah, I cannot claim any particularly recent Irish ancestry. But nevertheless, this episode does not go that far, right? I think one thing both these episodes have is that they are pushing a stereotype of Ireland, of a particular style of Irish village, that they're placing it on the coast, yet the counties they say it's near are nowhere near where the coast would be, or at least where they describe it. Anyway.
It's got that annoying like Irish flute music that as annoying as Irish music. It works as like Hobbit music for the Shire, but like it's not not good Irish
and
music.
the period stuff doesn't necessarily match, because I think the signs are in Irish, but they should be in like English at this point. Just based on the historical period. But anyway,
Tom Paris, he's a criminal.
And all of that can be explained away by the fact that it's a hologram, or it's a holographic program, and it's a holographic program designed by Tom Paris.
It's the 24th century.
They talk about Janeway being a big fan of Irish history, but she didn't design this program.
No.
Well, we can forgive some of the slightly rough edges.
For all we know, Harry Kim might have he might be like a quarter Irish or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the 24th century.
It's the 24th century. Anything
you can
goes.
live anywhere on Earth then, he's got relatives in Ireland.
So this story starts out with, it has a sci-fi motivation, right? But the whole holographic thing, if we're talking about starting with Fairhaven, it's really just a character development thing. It's all about Janeway. It's about Janeway getting a chance to loosen up a bit. And we've seen 6 seasons of Janeway trying to keep the crew together on this ship and keep them fucking alive. And that's stressful. And she has not had many opportunities, and not because she's not capable of it. I think she's very capable of loosening up and relaxing when she wants to, when she has the opportunity to, I should say. But I think the issue is that she hasn't had the opportunity very often. So this is a really interesting kind of take on that. Like, here, let's give her an opportunity to have some fun and do a couple little mild morality play things. I don't know. What do you think about this whole idea of Janeway meets a holographic man? She's not fooled by it or anything. She knows it's a hologram, but she's charmed by him. And then she immediately goes and manipulates his digital DNA.
Like, make him 3 centimeters taller. She gets rid of the facial hair, and she's like, "No, I don't like that at all." The facial hair.
It was like these like on the Nintendo Wii and the Switch and stuff. You could make your little Mii characters, or in Elder Scrolls or whatever. You can spend a lot of time.
Bitmoji.
Bitmoji too, building up your own character. But she's building up a different character. She's building up a sex doll character for all intents and purposes, like a charming sex doll.
Yeah, but everybody else, I bet you everybody else on that ship was doing a whole lot worse, man. Like,
oh, yeah.
I mean,
one has to presume, and they joke about that on Lower Decks, where they say, yeah, it's like 80% is just people going in there and doing some freaky sex stuff.
Yeah.
I guess the peculiar...
It's outer space, man. There's aliens, there's like funguses and anything happen in the holodeck.
Well, it's also really funny with the basic idea. I was thinking about how they've got the holodecks, and the tendency is to be like, all right, I want to be in a 1940s, film mystery novel, or I want to be in an old Irish village, not even an authentic one. Just
I want to fight a bunch of monsters.
Yeah,
That's a Worf thing.
They don't often go to the utterly bizarre. Now, obviously, there's production reasons for that, in terms of what's practical, and also story reasons, because oftentimes the story you want it to go a certain way. But I would like to see them, make her. I would like to have seen Janeway make some additional modifications to make the guy into some sort of like freaky monster, sexy monster, like Beauty and the Beast.
He turns into a wolf or something.
Like the Disney's Beauty and the Beast, when he turns back into a guy at the end, generally most people would agree that the guy looks kind of lame. She was into the Beast.
He was, yeah.
The Beast was he was a sexy fella.
She wanted the Beast.
I think most of us wanted the Beast. most of us wanted the Beast. But anyway, like I said, these are fluffy episodes. There's not a whole lot of thematic meat to them, I guess. Certainly in Fairhaven, it's just more about really developing the character of Janeway a little bit.
I think if it was me, I would have done something different. If I'm going to make an Irish village, I might, I'm going to make it a little more fantasy style. But I do something, if I want, why don't they do like some kind of tropical beach or some kind of island?
Yeah. We've seen that before.
With some pyramids or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Just something more interesting.
It's something super nerdy about, like, I want to do an seemingly authentic sort of Irish village, even though everybody's got a different accent.
If I had a holodeck, I'd try to have sex with a pulsar.
Yeah, right.
That sounds awesome.
That's gonna blow the back of your head off.
It's a pulsar, but you got the holodeck.
That's what you want.
You got the holodeck safeties on, so you're all good.
Yeah, as long as that's.
You can get a reasonable facsimile simulation of fornicating with a pulsar. Yeah. I mean, and if you're into that, or if you're not into that, whatever. We're not here to kink shame. Yeah. The point is you can get it all out of your system and have a good time on the holodeck.
So there's no reason for Janeway to be at all ashamed, but she's the captain. She feels responsible. She's got to set a standard, this and that. She's been worrying about everybody for 5 fucking years at this point.
I think one interpretation I have of that is that the reason she's ashamed is less about the fact that, as she pretty much admitted, that she was having sex with a hologram, which absolutely should not be shameful. I hope it's not shameful at this stage in human development in this paradise of the Federation, where everyone's got chilled out like a lot.
They got a hologram that outranks Harry Kim.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Good point. It's not just that. I would like to think that Janeway probably was enjoying the holodeck the appropriate way you would expect somebody to enjoy the holodeck, to let off some steam and all that other stuff.
They were just like out in the woods, like by the creek banging or something. It was all like tasteful, I'm sure.
Well, and the thing is again, in 24th century Starfleet, it shouldn't matter, even if it's completely tasteless.
Totally.
But yeah. I think the reason she was embarrassed was because she actually was feeling love, if not love, if that, like different because there's a difference between the sexual attraction versus infatuation. Sexual attraction, you're like, all right, that dude's the height I want. He's got the amount of beard I want. I fucking erased his wife from existence. Delete the wife.
She was a real drag, man.
Delete the wife. But then to go beyond that and become infatuated, I would say the one change that I was a little uncomfortable that she made, even though again it's perfectly reasonable given the context that the holodeck is effectively a romance novel, right? In this context, so there's no reason for it not to be, to change it to accommodate it to what's going to work for you, right? It's meant to be entertaining to you. But I still felt real weird when she was saying, like, give him the education of a university educated.
Third-year Trinity College.
Yeah,
student.
yeah. Well, she was very specific. Yeah, the Trinity College.
And then it backfired on her because he was naming all kinds of obscure Irish poets, and she was like, "I've never heard of those people."
He was like, "Oh man,
well, come on, you got to catch up."
This Kate woman is dumb.
I know.
I was respecting her, and she totally let me down. Yeah, that was funny that it backfired on her.
It's like, my aunt lives near here somewhere.
I love that. I really did love that gag on that. But it did make me uncomfortable because that's where I think it's where it's not that it goes over the line in a moral sense, but in sort of internal psychology. I can understand the guilt that could begin to be generated there, where you're like, all right, I kind of dug this guy already. That's already weird because he's a hologram. I wasn't lusting after him. I was like kind of into him, and then I tweaked his ass to be even more into him.
Yeah, that's like, this is the suitable companion for a starship captain.
Yeah. Well, and real quick, I figure it makes sense for us to mention I guess the main guest stars that people might know. The special guest star was Fintan McGowan. McCown, I think.
That's Michael Sullivan.
Yeah, Michael Sullivan.
He was on Game of Thrones.
He was on Game of Thrones. He was on Waking Ned Divine. And these episodes, that's what IMDb says he's known for.
He was a minor guy on Game of Thrones, and not, it was one of the like sort of nasty.
But he got special guest listing here, and if you look at his IMDb, he has a lot of apparently very impressive work. I kind of like to see more because I enjoy his work here, and I don't know, he's probably the only I believe he's actually Irish.
He's the only one in the second episode. One of the people I forget played somebody named
Ian Abercrombie.
That guy.
That was the old guy.
That guy's British.
Yeah, he's British, I thought.
And British, like, and sort of like, and he was in America a while. He's like sort of American.
Yeah, his most of his career seemed to be in America.
Mr. Pitt from Seinfeld.
Yes, Mr. Pitt.
He couldn't do an Irish accent either.
Yeah, maybe there was somebody else in the second episode. But
it was one of the women, and she had been married to Cole Meany.
Oh, yes, that's right. Cole Meany's ex-wife.
Back in the 90s, she was married to Cole Meany.
Well, the other person people might be familiar with is Richard Reel. He's the fellow who played Seamus. Yeah. And for Star Trek fans, he's probably most famous for playing B'Etai in The Inner Light. So if you remember The Inner Light, and I expect probably the vast majority of our audience will, he was B'Etai. And he's
just been in a ton of...
He's been a ton of other stuff. He was Dr. Jeremy Lucas in Enterprises. They had that three-part, the Augments storyline with sort of proto, Khan type people and Brent Spiner as another manifestation of Soon.
Office Space.
Yeah, he was in Glory.
Yeah.
He was in Free Willy. He was in Casino. He was in Deuce Bigelow. Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo. But Richard Reel was also in what most people agree is one of the best films ever made. Do you know what that is, Jesse?
Oh, no.
Fried Green Tomatoes.
Oh, snap.
He played the minister in Fried Green Tomatoes. It's a small role, but he's really good in it, and there's a great punchline with his character, which you can learn all about when we eventually do the It's Got Fried Green Tomatoes podcast, in which we watch Fried Green Tomatoes every week and then talk about it for 3 or 4 hours. We'll let you know when that's ready, when season 1 of that new podcast is ready.
I'm trying to remember who he plays in Glory.
Yeah, I can't remember. Was it the quartermaster or something?
Maybe it was. Yeah, maybe
it was something along those lines.
Some sort of Union Army stooge guy.
Yeah. But and it's funny because he's one of those faces that you see and you're like, oh, he must have been in a ton of Star Trek. But he was only in 3 things. He was in this. He was in the couple of episodes of Enterprise, and then the one episode Inner Light. But you just see him everywhere else. So that's why you see him here. he's also doing an American actor being Irish. And he's all like, pardon me, couldn't you spare some shillings?
Everybody had a different Irish accent in that village, man. It was fun.
It was pretty great. Yeah. And none of them sounded like Michael Sullivan.
Actual Irish guy.
Which maybe helped. I mean, honestly, and again, we know it's a hologram. We'll forgive all that.
It's
and
cool.
It's Tom Paris.
Maybe they didn't. Maybe the Irish accents are a little different than 24th century.
Honestly, we do have. We have a fair number of listeners in Ireland, and I
hope so.
really would like to hear from folks to hear from you all what you think about the representation of the Irish in Star Trek.
Yeah.
One example I forgot to mention was an example that didn't happen, which was on Deep Space Nine in season 1, that episode, If Wishes Were Horses. There's a Rumpelstiltskin character in there. It's basically there's apparitions show up and there's a Rumpelstiltskin character.
That was weird.
As scripted, that was supposed to be a leprechaun. And Cole Meany was like, I'm fucking out of here if you fucking make it be a leprechaun. I'm not gonna be fucking chatting with a goddamn leprechaun.
Yeah,
and I'm sure he was more assertive than that. That's the impression I got from reading the stories about it. So they changed it to Rumpelstiltskin.
That's hilarious.
But again, it's like the default is like, well, I know, let's just have a little leprechaun.
Right on, Cole Meany. Leprechaun, come on.
Oh man.
Because Harry Kim said some leprechaun shit. He's like, why didn't you add some leprechauns? It's like, shut up. Leprechauns aren't real. The Irish people are real.
Irish people are fucking for real. And what was the name of the castle that they were all afraid of?
I don't know.
Oh man, I thought I'd written it down, but I can't find it in my notes.
The thing about Ireland is like there's a whole bunch of castles all over the place.
Yeah.
So they should have had like a couple of castles around that village. There should have been like one nearby and then like one like over the way a little bit or something.
Yeah.
In my opinion, whatever.
I agree, but well, I mean, this all goes to show that in these 2 episodes they built this great world, and as we were saying, it seemed like they were going for a Vic Fontaine's lounge type thing, but it's never mentioned again. I mean, even with Janeway's close connection to Michael Sullivan,
that's funny.
By the end of this episode, and by the end of Spirit Folk, as I recall, not only are there no episodes focusing on it, I can't recall that they even really reference it again. I could be mistaken.
That's kind of bizarre because you would think they would at least sort of have some kind of reference to it, a revisit towards the end as they're getting close to home or something, and I don't know.
Maybe it was hard. I will say I could imagine that maybe renting that particular lot, I forget exactly, that's called like the European street lot or something. maybe they couldn't get it, or maybe if they had come up with this idea earlier in the series, because this is season 6, sort of like partway through season 6 is when we first get introduced to this. So it is a little bit late in the series. And the idea is a sound one. I really like the idea of having sort of an always on holodeck program.
That's like what would be ideal for holo technology.
Yeah, one would presume.
It seemed to have a lot of issues.
Yeah, but I wish they had gone back to this. And it's again, we mentioned how so often is on these lists of worst Star Trek Voyager episodes, and it really puzzles me because I think you could argue there's not a lot of excitement in maybe in Fairhaven. I think that's not true of Spirit Folk. I think Spirit Folk's kind of even more fun.
Yeah, it is. There's more there.
Yeah, there's more there. But in Fairhaven, this whole deal, the B story, I guess, with the neutronic wave front. It's a little superfluous. I almost wish they would have just not bothered with any of that and just focused on Janeway kind of wrestling with this idea of simultaneously the idea of having time for companionship when she's in charge of the lives of all these people. She's responsible for the lives of all these people.
Yeah,
exactly. In addition to the extra hurdle of, he's a hologram. He's a figment of my imagination. If you transpose this story into contemporary times, it would be as if it would be an argument about somebody falling in love with like a novel or something, and rewriting the novel to be more, suit it more to their needs, like sort of create a fanfic. And I'm sure people would have that debate today. I mean, I think, whatever floats your boat, whatever gets you through the day.
It makes more sense that they would have free time to spend on the hologram if there was just nothing going on. They're just like, well, we're just going to be cruising for a while. So take some time. We're still in the Delta Quadrant. So, have some fun, go to Fairhaven. You know,
Yeah.
it's chill. We're chilling.
And
It
presumably
doesn't make sense like some kind of crazy storm. You know,
Yeah.
What? Don't go to the hologram during the crazy storm. Go to the fucking bridge and ride it out.
I won't elevate it to saying this is a problem I had with this episode, even though I was just about to do that. It's more a little nitpicky thing. It's peculiar to me in Fairhaven that all of a sudden it's like, oh, this storm is going to somehow like kind of partially degrade the holographic program.
That was the only way it tied in. Yeah.
If it's running. And I can totally buy various arguments that totally make sense and would be totally rational. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't know, man. Come on, for real. Like, I understand, you know, it's a running program and it could corrupt the data files as it's like trying to save it or something like that. But that to me, that feels very 90s. Now, there's, to be fair to the writers, the show was written in the 90s, right? You're playing a video game in the 90s. I could see that sort of thing being an issue.
Right.
In the future, it seems a little ridiculous, and it's a little bit artificial. But
they could just use like the cloud or something.
Yeah, but ultimately, it does get us to a good bit of a dramatic moment because it's Janeway being forced to not only make the choice to damage Fairhaven because of the option is either keep the hologram running or the ship. I don't know. I guess the impression was the ship would be explode or something.
He was like, scrape the residual ions off the sonic showers if you have.
That's right. I guess they needed energy maybe. Yeah. And it takes a long time to shut down the holodeck for some reason. In this particular story only.
It's not the Enterprise.
Yeah. But it's got like biogel. You know.
Yeah.
It should be even better. Anyway.
It's not a galaxy class.
But it does make her make that choice, and I think that is a dramatic choice. You could argue it's an unnecessarily dramatic choice, and there's some element of the forced drama impeding the actual taking a little bit of the responsibility away from Janeway, because of course she's going to turn off the fucking holo program. Like, it's not a question that it's the safety of the ship or the hologram. The whole reason she enjoyed the hologram is because hanging out with Michael Sullivan was to relax a little bit, because she's been worried about the safety of these people. She's not going to risk their lives for them. So it's in that sense it's manufactured drama that doesn't quite make sense, because it's not a dilemma, right? They frame it and they direct it and they act it as if it's a dilemma where she has to like think about it, but she doesn't. She's like no, turn it the fuck off. What I think works better is when they're piecing the program back together, and apparently they have some option about this is a little, what they want to fix or not. She makes the conscious decision and the public decision to ask them to help keep the Michael Sullivan character, make sure that guy's got all his bits and pieces in order.
Oh, and she's not allowed to edit anymore. She like locks herself out of like editing power or something. Again,
that's part of why I really enjoyed this
subroutine
story. The stuff with the storm, it's not a real problem. It's just a little bit unnecessary, and I understand where they're coming from, especially from the 90s, and they do the same thing today, where sometimes they add a little bit of superfluous drama for the sake of drama. I wish they would do a little bit more that like they've done on all the series, but Deep Space Nine did it a lot, where the drama is the drama. It's the characters sitting in a room talking to each other and debating something or whatever, something along those lines. You don't necessarily need the blims and the blams and the blooms and the bloops.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this Jameson Caskmates IPA edition.
It's nice. It's got a crisp finish like an IPA.
Finished in craft beer barrels, presumably IPA. With a slightly
Are they making IPAs
and
in Ireland?
Hobby. Well, that's the thing. They got to buy them. They got to buy them. Like, this is probably some West Coast of the United States of America,
right?
Where they make the meanest IPAs, the mossiest IPAs, sort of the wettest IPAs, if you know what I mean. Just wet.
So it fits in with the Jameson.
High ABV and high hop count, and whatever that scale they have for the how hoppy it is. Anyway,
there's a hoppy scale.
There's a hoppiness scale.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's called like the Flubeltops. Flum scale. Well, even though Scotty, he prefers his scotch, and I think he would enjoy this. I think Montgomery Scott would enjoy this. Unfortunately, I know this is an episode focused on Irish stuff, but as we've talked about earlier, there aren't a lot of Irish characters that we can reference and safely reference in Star Trek. Michael Sullivan's a pretty good one. He's got a good head on his shoulders, and he doesn't come off as a bumbling lunatic.
There's O'Brien.
Yeah, O'Brien's
That's
obviously.
about it.
He's the. I should have said O'Brien. I'm an asshole.
He's in so much Star Trek.
He is. He's like in the most Star Trek.
Yeah. Besides Worf.
Yeah, besides Worf. I'm a complete piece of shit. Well, there you go. I don't deserve the name Pate Christopher.
You got the Deep Space Nine cup in your hand.
I've got the Deep Space Nine cup in my hand. That's right. We should mention that Jesse and I are both enjoying our fine Irish whiskeys out of official Star Trek merchandise. These are whiskey tumblers or Scotch tumblers, whatever your preference and current geographic location. Mine has, it says property of Deep Space Nine and has a silhouette of Deep Space Nine etched on it. What does yours have on there, Jesse?
I've got the Enterprise D.
Jesse's got the Enterprise D, property of the Enterprise D. Yeah. And these were gifted to me once upon a time in the not too distant past from our regular co-host, Dan Glaubitz.
That's right. Yeah.
From Dan, who is, as we mentioned, he's still on assignment, but will be back with us soon. But we honor him and all of Star Trek. And
there's a Discovery
and Ireland,
and maybe just an original Enterprise or an Enterprise.
Yeah, we got a TOS. We have 4 tumblers.
Yeah.
TOS, Enterprise, and the Discovery.
But no Voyager. So
yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I'd be totally drinking out of the Voyager one. All right. So any odds and ends on this particular episode, and then we can shift over to Spirit Folk. I will say I really enjoyed, and this applies to both this one and Spirit Folk. The Doctor setting himself up as the priest is genius. Yeah. It's genius because he frequently two of the primary characteristics of the Doctor throughout Voyager are that he seeks greater authority and he loves to have an audience.
Yeah.
And in this priest character, he gets to have both. He gets to boss people around, literally speaking the word of God, the command of God, although they assiduously avoid using the term God for the most part in these episodes.
He just talks about sinners a lot.
Yeah, but then he's got a captive audience who has to listen to him and has to sit there. But I also love that the audience thinks he's kind of a goofy.
Oh yeah, because
guy.
It's in the next episode where he talks about photons and photons and force fields, like flesh and blood or photons and force fields. And they're like, and I think he got into the sacramental one.
Yeah, and the woman who makes that comment at first, she's just like, this guy, he loves the sound of his own voice. It's like, you got that right. You got that right. And but anyway, so
I've got one. I've got an odds and ends. When Tuvok is all queasy from the space turbulence, and Neelix is talking about making blood pudding.
Yeah.
And he all says like it coagulates, and he all says it all funny like He makes a face.
Yeah.
That was the best use of Neelix.
Yeah, he made a scrunchy face and
coagulates. And then like Tuvok is just about loses it. He's just like, oh no.
Janeway had a few I should say Kate Mulgrew had a few interesting line deliveries when she says, "I rarely lose." This is when she's first meeting Michael Sullivan. Basically, she's like, "I rarely lose." The other one is when she's arm wrestling with him, and he's all like, "Shall we call it a draw?" And she's all like, "Sounds good to me."
Yeah, I know.
I was like, I've never seen Kate Mulgrew in that mode.
Yeah, right.
Which was interesting. Also, Seamus hitting on 7 of 9.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So
it was. I thought that was pretty cute. I think we've discussed before.
She was totally game. She went off of.
They're in the. We've mentioned before that we love 7 of 9 as a character. Some of the writing and production around 7 of 9, like a la her uniform, etc. There's some stuff to debate and talk about there. It's not always handled super well. But this one I thought was a well presented. And he's being all sort of pseudo stereotypical Irish poet, which is problematic maybe in his own way, but. And she just doesn't understand what he's saying, basically, but it works. And then Harry Kim being all like, "Well, I can't believe that worked."
Yeah.
He's all bitter. But as we see, later in Spirit Folk, like Harry King needs to he needs to stop reading so many books or watching movies and like just start actually talking to talking to girls more.
I know, right? What a dork.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. I did like there's some Irish licks in the music, some sort of like little do-do-do. They verge on the uncomfortable occasionally.
Oh yeah, I agree. It usually it's rarely tastefully done.
Yeah, it's not actual Irish music.
Yeah.
It's that's that whole thing. It's like
it's pretty Hollywood.
You had the opportunity to do something a little bit more authentic, but instead it's you're the producers were they were like, the audience is going to think of it's like the Chinese gong. I mean, I gotta say it's basically the same as the Chinese gong. It's
like some Japanese sounds.
Yeah,
this is what Japan sounds like.
Yeah, this is what the audience thinks it sounds like, so we have to use it to indicate that this is. We need to say that this is Ireland.
It's like I said when you one of the first things you hear is like that kind of Irish flute, like kind of sort of high and thin sounding Irish flute, and like you hear that. That's like part of like the Hobbit music in The Shire. Yeah. And it works as Hobbit music. It doesn't. I don't think it works as Hollywood Irish music.
It's also kind of like the inner light music. That Picard learns on the flute.
Because that's kind of like a penny whistle, kind of a flute. It's like a little mini penny.
Penny farthing. Paris says it will take 6 to 7 weeks to fix things up in Fairhaven, and the next episode that we're talking about, Spirit Folk, aired exactly 6 weeks later.
Oh, okay.
Which I don't know if that was on purpose, but it was. I probably was.
He wasn't even doing a Scotty there.
Yeah. And I was wondering how they filmed this. I mean, since they had to rent that lot, presumably they didn't film these back to back. I tried to look it up.
It doesn't look like they did because the people look a little different. Like they did the makeup a little different, and there's more people because they have all the there are a lot more people. There's a lot more people because you got like Mr. Pitt and some other weird characters.
Now, I really enjoyed Fairhaven. But I think I enjoy Spirit Folk a little bit more, even though it's often rated worse. I don't know. There was a fun about it. There was a little bit more whimsy.
Well, yeah, because you got more characters. You got so there's more color to the town, and everybody's like, because of the state of the program, everybody's like got more attitude, and they've got much more personality because they're
figuring shit out.
They've been running for so long.
Yeah, and I like this idea of, again, this is not new in Star Trek. There's the hologram, the holodeck is malfunctioning in some way.
Right.
They introduced a little stuff here that I don't know if I entirely bought it. This whole, B'Elanna was upset because she was like, you can't run a holo program this long. Which, okay, that's fine. They can set whatever rules they want. It just doesn't seem to be consistent. I mean,
yeah, that's lame.
In this episode, she's just there to be annoying. Which is unfortunate because she's a cool character, but
it's true. Yeah.
She's just. Yeah, I wish there was more. They would have done more with her in this episode. I think unfortunately that was pretty common. Occasionally you'd have like a real strong B'Elanna episode.
She's often she's just underutilized.
I guess she's like, she's an engineer.
That's not her fault. That's the fucking writers.
No,
fuck those guys.
And it would have been fun to see her interacting with some of these Irish folk. And maybe that's that's not the vibe they wanted to go to because they know B'Elanna would be kicking ass and.
It's super human centric to be like, let's make an Irish village and everybody's going to dig it. Oh, like, is everybody a human on that ship besides like B'Elanna and Tuvok?
Because Tuvok doesn't go.
He's not into it. He's like, no.
Neelix is the only non-human to go.
Yeah,
that we see, other than the Doctor, but he's in human form.
Neelix just wants to cause trouble someplace.
Yeah, he just wants to make a bunch of blood sausages and boil a bunch of cabbage and potatoes. But I really liked this concept of the holograms getting suspicious and because of the subroutines sort of mutating, I guess, for lack of a better term, and giving them some level of awareness of what's going on, they get suspicious about these visitors to their town. And it was like watching a ghost story from the perspective of the ghosts. It's like, we know the deal. We know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
But the villagers, they don't. And then the other thing I was thinking about this story was, this is from the perspective of 24th century people. They've created this holodeck program. And then the people in the holodeck program are acting at least the way the 24th century programmer, Tom Paris, perceived that they would act, given their...
Interstellar criminal, Tom Paris.
their personality traits, right? Okay. But where this story works is it's not for the 24th century audience, because of course they know the deal. It works in the sense that if they had set this story in 2021... I mean, people probably would have reacted in similar ways to the exact situation, right? We haven't necessarily we might have changed some of the processes and some of the manifestations of our fear of the unknown and bizarre. But I think you still could see the mob mentality. You could still see the rumor mill kind of accelerating, and little bits and pieces of information getting shared, and then a unified conclusion is arrived at. In this case, it's by holographic Irish villagers. I think you do see it here on the level of whole nations in contemporaneous times.
I would have liked to have seen, like, if they had more time to do the episode, I would have liked to have seen like more wacky stuff happening, like the people in the village observing stuff, and like other crew members that are visiting, and like what's going on here, and like if there was just sort of more funkiness, because the program's been running for so long. There's so much stuff happening, and that's part of the problem. It would have been cool to have a little more, just a little more color in there.
Absolutely. They were constrained somewhat.
Because Tom's all like, I added bells and whistles, and we totally saw some bells and whistles, but, we need a little more bells and whistles.
Yeah, get the vibe a little bit. And the theme, sort of, what little theme there is there. And again, there doesn't always have to be something groundbreaking or society changing. But here, I guess the main thing we're doing is we're looking at this idea of mob mentality and sort of viewing it through this particular prism. However, it's undercut somewhat by the fact that, again, in 2021, if I start seeing like walls shift and fade out of existence, this fine Jameson cask makes Irish whiskey IPA edition, if that suddenly just disappeared or morphed into a lizard, I would be concerned. And I would, and if these activities sort of came in relation to like some polite strangers coming into my town that I had befriended, I could understand. I would like to resist the idea to immediately blame them, but And
if you're programmed to be some sort of weird stereotypical version of a 19th century Irish person, then
so what you have
you're
here,
believe in fairies.
What you have here, I think, is you have. I bet you, because the writers of this show. And let me remind myself who this episode. This episode is written by Brian Fuller, right?
Yeah,
Brian Fuller knows how to write a story, right? We know from Hannibal, and some of American Gods, and some of Discovery before he got thrown off.
That's right. Yeah.
We're left.
Brian did Hannibal.
He did. Yeah. Brian Fuller knows how to write a script and how to consider different things. I think what we had here was they fell in love with this image. And I understand why, because I live it too, of Tom Paris pranking young Harry Kim, as everyone calls him, by turning his I don't know what the appropriate term is, for the person he's wooing.
His date.
Yeah, I guess, his date. Maggie, by turning her into a cow just as they're about to kiss. And you get this amazing image of Harry Kim very briefly, kissing a cow on the lips. And then not only becoming upset because Maggie's been turned into a cow, but yelling at Tom saying, like, I could have been trampled. Which, I don't know, that really tickled me for some reason. I thought, and Garrett Wang's delivery was just, I don't know, it was good. It was really good.
There could have been more pranking with Tom Paris and
well, there could have been more pranking, but a different direction they could have gone that would have lacked that brilliant image. And again, I maybe in the writer's room, this was the battle. It's like, well, we got this great image, but on the other hand, that image undercuts it a little bit because, yes, the villagers seeing that are justifiably should be weirded out because that's direct evidence of Tom Paris was involved in that, and Harry Kim doesn't seem too bothered by it.
Right.
He's more annoyed at his friend. If I'm seeing that, I'm like, those people are, I might not think they're demons, but I think they're up to something.
Right. Because he knows it's a hologram.
Maybe I probably think they're founders, or some other sort of changeling. So that undercuts it a little bit because it's like, it's no longer the villagers being unreasonably suspicious and forming a mob mentality. It's more like, no, they've witnessed some fucked up weird shit.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I do really like, in the resolution towards the end where they point out, Michael Sullivan, I guess it was, points out that, most of the shit they did other than the turning Maggie into a cow business was good. Like they rescued a child from a well.
Yeah.
Right? They helped people out. So it's not a 100% tightly written story, but it's okay. I like that they left Harry Kim kissing a cow in there. And I like Tom Paris best when he's being playful and ridiculous.
Yeah. Maggie's a good name for a cow. Her name's already Maggie. She can be a cow.
And her reaction to when she was coming to, she's like, I was in the church. I was wearing nothing but a bell. And you were there. And you were there. And everyone was looking at me. Again, Star Trek, like we discussed last week about Assignment Earth, Star Trek has this tendency to force us to think of women naked, and at the very least, they could start forcing us to think of men naked more often. I think they've done it a couple times. Sometimes they've shown us naked men, but we never got to see Garrick naked. That's all I'm saying is that, not in canon anyway.
Or any of them Cardassians. Who knows? Who knows what's going on there?
Yeah, as we know, Dan mentioned on a previous episode of the podcast that he was. He often imagined he wanted to know how far down the ridges go on Cardassians. He was quite keen to see
just
a naked
all
Cardassian.
ridges, or?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like the dots on a trill or not, but
right, exactly, right. Because
anyway,
those go all the way down.
There are certain spots of the internet that provided not definitive answers to Dan's question, but
it's
some interpretations.
It's that rule.
Rule 34.
Rule 34.
Yeah. Do Rule 34 Garrick. And you'll see a variety of interpretations of whether or not the Cardassian ridges go all the way down. But we digress.
Right on.
And part of that is due to this Jameson Caskmates Irish Whiskey IPA edition, which is I've nearly drained, and now I'm going to be moving on to our Redbreast very shortly.
That's a nice one. It's real smooth.
Yeah.
Rich. It's a single. What's it say?
It's a single malt, Redbreast,
yes.
Delicious little.
Jameson's more of a blend, I believe.
Yeah. There are a lot of good lines in this episode. Never underestimate an Irish hologram. Janeway had that line, talking about Michael Sullivan.
Sounds about right.
Because Michael Sullivan does this clever thing where he's kidnapped by aliens. It turns into an episode of X-Files briefly because Michael Sullivan is effectively abducted by aliens, people he thought he knew, taken to some strange place, and they're just talking amongst themselves, pretending he's not there, and he catches wind that they're they're like, oh, he's not behaving properly. We're gonna have to fix him, and so he pretends, plays dumb, sort of. Apparently, I don't know. I guess Harry Kim didn't look closely enough at the algorithm. Because he seemed to say like, oh, see, there's the algorithm. It's not working properly. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But he manages to go back. And now Michael Sullivan is kind of suspicious of Kate, Captain Janeway, and all the rest of them. And that's when Janeway has this line, where they're all like, oh, you was just fooling us. And she says, never underestimate an Irish hologram. Now, again, as with some of the things we mentioned in Fairhaven, I don't need to know if you have to say never underestimate an Irish hologram.
Right.
Maybe just a hologram would be fine.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, the 90s ethnic humor
I know.
Was interesting. We notice it more these days.
Yeah. They're still doing Irish jokes for some reason. Huh?
I think some people, they're like, you need to have somebody you can make fun of, and we're allowed to make fun of Irish people.
Make fun of other white people.
I think it's okay to make fun of all sorts of people, including white people. But I don't know. It's when it's paired with the the hearty-tarty, the harp and two and the boo and two. That's where it gets a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, totally.
But in terms of joke structure, it works. I like when you've got the mob coming together. Right. I like the scene where that happens. The scene where Seamus is sort of talking to people. And at first they're kind of like, yeah, whatever. And a couple people are into whatever he's saying. But then as the episode continues, more and more people they get together in the pub and they're discussing it. And he's got their ear. And then other people start making examples. And I enjoyed how they structured that scene and how it was blocked and acted. It was charming. It was like a really charming way to to show the process of the people forming a mob. I think a lesser writer would have gotten away with, sort of skipping ahead to the mob bit, just saying like, all right, and just have them be more immediately whatever. They actually, the villagers had a bit of a debate. There's a bit of a back and forth. The doctor, that doctor fellow, not the doctor,
right, yeah,
but that other doctor. He wasn't on board at first because presumably he's a more quote unquote man of science, so he's not into their little fairy tales.
Because they go to the church and they start doing a bunch of like non-Christian stuff at the church.
Yeah!
Like all kinds of like, they got a book of incantations and like they're drawing circles on the floor and they got those ashberries and...
What was the other thing they had? It was ashberries and...
they had red twine and they were making the nets to tie up fairies with red twine.
Which were completely effective as it turned out.
Oh, totally. Yeah, they netted Tom and Harry.
But it is a good observation, Jesse, that they're doing all of this in a church. And it's an interesting juxtaposition of these are presumably church, going folks, but they're immediately willing to dip into the occult.
Yeah.
the moment their fear overtakes them.
It's probably it's just kind of European. There's always that.
Yeah.
That old kind of pagan magic lingering.
Old kind of rock and roll, pagan rock and roll, the best kind of rock and roll. Yeah, so it's
like Led Zeppelin.
They navigate us through the evolution of what's going on here. Like as you said, I think there are definitely would have been opportunities if they had a little bit more time in order to lay it all out. Might have been a little bit more organic, but they navigate us through all this pretty well until we get to sort of the extra fun part of the episode is when they actually come into the bar and capture Harry and Tom.
Yeah.
Now there is one nerdy nitpicking point where they're in there. They're in the bar. They're threatening Tom with a weapon. They all have various, but the one guy has a shotgun, and then he shoots the computer console.
Yeah.
With a shotgun. And then at that point, the computer is all like, uh-oh, safety protocols have been disengaged. And oh, by the way, now you can't turn off the program for some reason. I'm fine with that. What I'm confused by is if the shotgun blast is what turned off the safety protocols, why did the shotgun blast work in the first place?
Right, exactly.
It should not have been able to damage.
Yeah, how can you exactly
damage the computer screen?
How does the computer damage the safety protocols?
I wonder what damaged this redbreast. Irish pot still whiskey.
I don't think it's damaged at all.
Aged 12 years.
It seems to be working quite well.
Yeah. It's damaged my brain somewhat. Again, public service announcement. Yeah. Clink, clink. Yeah, we're doing this after eating. We came here to the Feather and Pheasant pub with the harp on the signal in Fairhaven. That's where we're at now.
Yeah, we had like a bunch of lambs.
We had a bunch of lamb. And
potatoes.
I had some blood sausage. I think Jesse's not as into it.
I had the cabbage.
Black
instead.
pudding. I have. Yeah, get them cabbage. I don't know if they would have had corned beef in this time period, and so I didn't order it. Corned beef is not an Irish invention, of course. I believe it is a Jewish invention, but it is popular.
It's pretty tasty.
It's popular in Ireland. Yeah, corned beef and cabbage, corned beef hash, corned beef, good stuff. Redbreast. And they're not a sponsor, by the way.
It's been aged 12 years.
Neither Jameson nor Redbreast are sponsoring us this evening.
It's got toasted oak and sherry undertones.
They may be sponsoring our new podcast called It's Got Patrick and Jesse. Knocking back a bunch of whiskey and...
We're getting drunk on a podcast.
And podcasting
It's got podcast.
It's got podcasting drunk. I don't know. What's the point? What's the point of this whole fucking business with this fucking racist Irish bullshit? But it is charming. I do like these episodes. So where were we? Yes, mob in the church doing occult magic to try to ward off spirits, which was fun. I liked it, and I liked that. Okay, so all right, they capture Harry and Tom. They capture them with the red netting, which is cute because it totally works, right? They drag him to the church. The doctor, the actual doctor.
They capture the doctor.
He comes in and he's being all sinners. Robert Pickard was so genius in this episode. He was just chewing the scenery way more than he even already does as the doctor. It was really. I mean, you put a priest collar and a long flowing frock on him, and he kept wearing it. He was just wandering around the Voyager hallway just wearing his priest outfit because he loved that shit.
In the earlier episode, Janeway is talking to the doctor, and it's like she's confessing to the priest.
Yeah, she is. And one thing we didn't mention, that is smooth. That redbreast. People listening to podcasts, they love mouth sounds.
Yeah.
And they love like slurping, like.
In a minute, I'll start vaping into the microphone.
Anyway, in Fairhaven, when Janeway is talking to the Doctor, he gives her this advice about it's okay, not only it's okay to loosen up, it's okay to love a hologram. He's like, I'm a fucking hologram. God damn it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, on the one hand, his advice is a little biased because, he obviously wants Janeway to be like cool with like, not like with like, falling in love with that hologram because then that makes him more real in a sense. But I agree with him. 100%. Have fun. Fall in love with a hologram. Fall in love with the novel. Write your own fanfic.
Especially holograms have been running for like a few weeks and shit.
Yeah, advanced, super duper level
blowing out them emitters.
But so they capture the Doctor, and Robert Picardo's already being funny, coming in, being the Doctor, screaming about sinners and stuff like that. And then they take his bubble emitter, right? They say, "Oh, it's another talisman." They associate it with the pad they found on Tom Paris.
Yeah, his little Game Boy they took from him.
Yeah, and they took the mobile emitter, and now the Doctor has been integrated into that program. And again, it's nerdy, it's Star Trek-y, but it works so well to have the Doctor. Now Robert Picardo gets to switch over to, okay, I'm in the program. I'm still myself, but now I'm like susceptible to the program's vibe.
And they totally hypnotized him.
And they hypnotize his ass, and I don't know.
He's just like the most susceptible person to hypnotism ever.
Yeah, he was, and he played it so well. And Tom and Harry are just like, Jesus fucking Christ, this guy.
What is he saying over here?
Oh my God, he's just telling them everything.
Telling them everything.
But the best joke of all in there was like, there's like they say if you learn a creature's true name, you're impervious to its charms. And they're like, "What's your true name?" He's like, "I haven't decided yet." Yeah, because as we all know, as Voyager fans,
I'm the emergency medical guy.
The Doctor there's a lot going into the Doctor trying to pick a name for himself or not in the end. So
he goes with Steve in the end.
Steve is like, "I'm Steve Zimmerman," but anyway. More Robert Picardo, Redbreast.
Hell yeah.
Redbreast 12-year aged whiskey. The more Robert Picardo you can get, the better, in my book. All right. So they capture these guys. They capture Robert Picardo. He tells them to deal, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, Michael Sullivan puts the mobile emitter on.
Yeah,
and
he gets loose.
And then they beam him to the bridge because they think he's the Doctor. And then it's not the Doctor. And then Janeway, in her mind, there's a little thought bubble coming out of her mind. And she's like, "Never underestimate an Irish hologram."
If only we had Dan here to do the Janeway
I know.
voice.
Dan is the one who can do the Janeway voice. He does the Janeway voice, and he does the Charles Trip Tucker III voice, which, by the way, that's my favorite one.
Yeah,
it used to be, my favorite used to be Dan recounting the speech in Klingon from the Star Trek Discovery pilot episodes. Talk me. Human tru. Andorian too. That used to be my favorite until he started doing a Charles Trip Tucker III. I honestly, if we can do, you guys write in to feedback@itsgotstartrek.com or hit us up on Twitter at It's Got Star Trek or on Facebook, wherever the fuck you want. You write in, you let us know if you'd be willing to pay our Patreon fee if we start a whole secondary podcast with it's just Dan doing Charles Trip Tucker III. Just doing a podcast in his voice. He could do engineering updates. Is like, to Paul was giving me a hard time last night. Come on, to Paul. Of course, I can't do it. I'm mimicking it to get the real deal. You'll have to wait for Dan to get back.
He's got that stuff down.
He's got it all, and he's storing it all up, I'm sure, wherever he's off on a secret assignment. But again, he'll be back soon. But all right. So anyway, to wrap up Spirit, folks, they
had a super sweet ending.
Yeah.
Where everybody's like, we can still be friends. You guys are all right. You didn't really do that bad stuff. We formed a mob against you, but you're all right.
It was the right ending. It was the absolute right ending.
It was a Mark Twain book.
Yeah. what is it, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court.
Yeah, that one's a weird book. You ever read that book?
I did. Yeah, I love Mark Twain.
Yeah,
Samuel Clemens. His letters are really good too because he wrote a bunch of like mean letters to people.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
really good. He was really good at being mean to people in letters. Especially the person who was trying to sell snake oil to him, like after his son died.
Oh yeah, right. He had all sorts of personal tragedy in his life.
He had a whole bunch of personal. Somebody was trying to say like, "Oh yeah, I'll get you to talk to your son or whatever," and he was like, "Man, fuck you."
Oh man.
But he said it, all clever,
Yeah,
Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain style. Yeah. So yeah, the ending is wonderful. It's cute. It makes sense that they don't erase their memories, and it's in proper Star Trek style. It's a miscommunication. They learn more about each other, and now they can be friends. And it does change the vibe of New Fairhaven. However, it's a new vibe. It's a more organic vibe because now this is not Tom Paris's weird, bizarre, stereotypical, arguably racist construction. Filter through the prism of hundreds of years and whatever goes on in Tom Paris's
it's like this
handsome, clever head.
That guy doesn't read books, like because he had to make the I'm sorry, Janeway had to alter the Michael Sullivan guy so he actually reads books because the Tom Paris version of Michael Sullivan, he's like, well, I'm not much on reading.
I'm not much on reading. I'm just much on staying with my wife.
Yeah,
I want to stay together with my wife, who I love very much.
I like to arm wrestle. I like to play ring toss.
I like to play ring toss with strange ladies in the middle of the night while drinking tea. Drinking tea and
then
tossing ride.
They were drinking whiskey after that.
Oh yeah, that's right. They did switch over. So it's I like when Seamus is saying, basically Seamus and everybody's like talking to them is like, do you think you can help out with this thing, or do you think blah 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 blah? Use your special equipment, your space people equipment. But on the other hand, they don't go the full way, and I understand why, because unless I miss something. In any of my many prior viewings of this, or the one I watched today or yesterday, they don't tell them that they're on a ship also, right? They seem to, and it's a little bit awkward how they write it. They're kind of like, well, we're on a spaceship and we're just hanging out with you guys for a little bit, and they seem to imply that you guys are living in Ireland. And we are just going to come and hang out when we want because we're just like hanging out here above the earth.
They're not going to pose any sort of existential problems for these villagers. Like we're on a spaceship and we're visiting you. You ever see the Time Machine? Or you ever read the Time Machine?
I know it's totally misleading.
We time traveled. We came back here. We're just visiting. We like it here. It's all good.
Like we're on a spaceship that time travels.
You guys are real.
We're on a time ship that space travels.
We didn't make you guys up at all.
Yeah. So, it might have been interesting to, give them the full truth and then have the, it's Star Trek. They can write whatever they want. They could be like, oh, we're fine with that. No problem. It worked for Moriarty, and maybe that's what they were trying to avoid.
They should have made them all vampires.
Well, again, this goes back. We touched on this briefly, but this whole issue with the holodecks, both of these stories, Fairhaven and Spirit Folk, are charming, wonderful, fluffy, good Star Trek episodes. Very enjoyable. I think totally worth watching, especially if you're just into relaxing a little. You're not into like putting on the fucking Year of Hell or something because your year has felt like hell, right? So sometimes you don't want to watch that. These are great episodes for that. However, I would like to see maybe, I don't know, in Discovery. I mean, Lower Decks, they've gone a little bit further because they have the animation, but I think I want to see in a live action Star Trek, I want them to see them do some hog wild shit on the holodeck. Some like hog wild shit.
They're due for that. It's almost like they're avoiding that because it's like some kind of tired old trope or something, but
because we haven't seen much of the holodeck stuff.
They should do some Discovery holodeck, especially because whatever the holodeck they're doing in the 31st century, whatever.
Exactly. Now that they've moved ahead in Discovery,
they got detached nacelles. What's the holodeck doing?
Exactly. And we'll see. Picard season 2 is going to have Q in it, so I'm sure they're going to do all sorts of. There will be some interesting,
They
crazy
don't
stuff
even
there.
need the holodeck.
But I want to see one thing that Star Trek has the potential to do that other shows that are great shows. Like I love The Expanse, and I think you could argue very easily that The Expanse is in many ways a more well put together, more worthwhile show in a lot of ways than any given individual particular Star Trek episode. However, The Expanse, part of its charm, and this is similar to a certain degree in Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, is the constraints they put on themselves in terms of trying within certain parameters of sticking to real science.
Yeah.
Star Trek, it's not total lunacy, but
It's not Star Wars.
the setup for Star Trek is we're telling stories and the sci-fi is the backdrop.
Right.
And we don't want the stories to be 100% reliant on the sci-fi or on the realistic science. In fact, the reverse. We want to be able to use the flavors of science in order to justify some interesting stories.
It's classic fiction.
And you could do some really, particularly with the holodeck, but not only, of course, in terms they could go to some crazy alien planets or whatever. And they've done that. You know, we've seen like, you know, weird worm creatures and stuff like that. But I'm talking about some like the holodeck lets you do some like psychedelic crazy shit. And it would be interesting to see something a little bit more mind-bending. Kind of like you know what, the closest thing I think they've got that I do think they did very well was in season 3 of Discovery with the Adira, when they were in the Trill sort of mind space, right? That kind of thing I really enjoyed. Yeah. And it would be cool to see more of that. But anyway, you know, this was the 90s. Or no, actually, this was 2000. The Fairhaven, I think Fairhaven was the first Star Trek episode broadcast in the 2000s. I think it was January 12th, I want to say. And then the Spirit Folks was February. So 2000s, but still. Early days.
If you think about it, even if you take 24th century technology, if these guys weren't the heroes of a TV show, there's not a good chance that those guys are coming back from the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah.
If you think about it, like, come on.
Yeah, for real.
Their chances were slim. Like, they should have just been sort of resigned to the fact that, like, we're just going to be out here and we just have to start our own Starfleet by ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not getting back.
Which would be an interesting story. And I would have, you know, and you could do that a couple of different ways. I mean, I guess we're temporarily saturated for the moment with Star Trek series, given all the series that are out there at the moment with Strange New Worlds and Prodigy coming up and Discovery and Picard, Lower Decks, hopefully and presumably still some short treks here and there. And then you've got a couple other things in the works, and there's that perhaps Section 31 still going on. We don't know, but doing a show where the premise is it's not getting lost somewhere and then trying to get back. Not that there's a problem with that, but we've done that with Voyager and with some sub stories elsewhere. But either maybe an expedition to set up something far away, or maybe some people who purposely try to get away. Now, Prodigy might actually kind of go slightly in that direction. I don't want to spoil the setup that's known thus far, but Captain Janeway is going to be, Kate Mulgrew is going to be playing the character or a version of the character of Catherine Janeway on Prodigy.
Oh, cool.
But it is geared towards children, which I love. I think that's great. I think it's wonderful that they're doing that. But in terms of what I want to see is I would love to see something that's real far out there and also much less human centric, right? I mean, even if, you know, I still think there was always talk about maybe doing like a Klingon centric show.
I know.
Cardassian centric.
They've been sort of teasing that for decades.
It would be fun. Or if they would do the streaming has opened up a lot of possibilities. But they're still a little bit in that old, it's a transition right now. And so now we're down to, you know, 10 episodes or 13 episodes, more budget per episode and all that. And then you have the short treks, which is cool. I would love to see more franchises like Star Trek doing things like, well, we'll just do a 6-episode series about like a particular political dilemma on Cardassia.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Self-contained, connected in some ways, but different points in time, different points in Star Trek history, move away from the humans a little bit, do what Deep Space Nine did and have a lot more characters kind of viewing humans from the outside. So we're doing some self-critical, interesting, moralizing. which is, I think, both appropriate and would be awesome to see. Give some really good story opportunities. Where we've seen them do that before has worked very well. So that would be interesting to see a little bit more of that.
Absolutely.
Now, most of this is the Redbreast 12-year single malt Scotch, Irish whiskey, talking because we've completely veered off of this whole spirit folk thing.
But a lot of it is the fact that we've been doing almost 80 episodes of a podcast.
That's right. This is episode 79.
And we're just talking about Star Trek.
We're talking about Star Trek. That's what you're here for. That's the niche audience that we're after, is people who've seen every episode of Star Trek and don't mind bouncing around.
In 20 weeks, we'll be up to 100 episodes.
100 episodes, and we'll do something very special for that 100th episode.
It'll be a big fucking blowout.
Yeah.
100 worth. 100's worth.
100. We'll cover We'll cover 100 episodes. You need to refill your
I do. Look,
Redbreast or your Jameson or your Bushmills. Yes, we can toast. Here, clink. There you go. Yeah, I hope you heard that over the fucking din.
I'm gonna go for
this place in Fairhaven.
Go for the James.
All right. So as Jesse fills the Jameson, we can start closing things out here. A couple other things.
Apple Podcast.
Apple. Yeah, you have to say. You have to say. But for all you folks out there, you have to say Apple Podcasts a lot, because then I guess their algorithms. We don't know this is true, but we think that their algorithms catch you, and then you get more listeners, because we've noticed an uptick since we just started saying stuff like Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast.
Yeah, if you Google. It's got Star Trek. Apple Podcasts will pop up.
Pop right up
on the list.
Pop right up there. I like the line, "You'd be surprised at how many things a bullet can stop." I don't know. It's a fairly prosaic line, but I forget who says that. Maybe it might have been Milo or one of the other characters. But there's more than one way to pluck the wings off a pixie, which I believe Seamus says before they go to the occult stuff.
That's a Seamus line.
Yeah,
right there,
that's where he's all like, talking about his auntie or whatever, who before she died. He's always, everyone he brings up is like, before they died.
It's another, like, not everybody in Ireland has a tragic backstory.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Come on,
it fits into that weird stereotypeness. All right, I guess that's the end of my odds and ends on that particular episode. Spirit Folk, I like them both. Fairhaven, Spirit Folk, both excellent, both whimsical and fun. Spirit Folk I had a little bit more fun with, but I don't think I would have absent watching Fairhaven in close proximity.
They
complement each other.
They definitely fit together. It's just kind of funny how they did that in Star Trek. How there was like these two interconnected episodes about like a total side thing,
and then you never hear about it.
And then you never hear about it again.
What would be? I want writers to be braver. I love that we're getting all this cool stuff. I like that we get to see Captain Picard, Admiral Picard, retired, whatever he is now. I like that they're bringing people back. I want more boldness when they do it, and I think a bold thing to do for a Voyager, not reboot, but sort of going back to Voyager, some sort of modern incarnation of Voyager, would be for them to base a season around, like, Michael Sullivan crawls out of like the he's like locked in some sort of data bank somewhere, and he finds his way out, and he finds Captain Janeway, and then now she's an admiral. And he sort of like maybe harasses her or something, not in a sexual harassment way, just sort
he's
of
like kind of following her around.
And maybe she's got another beau at this point.
Well, she's got that boyfriend that she was talking to in the pilot, right?
Yeah, because Michael Sullivan in Fairhaven, I think it's at the beginning of Fairhaven. When they meet, is like, do you have a man to go back home to, or something like that? And she's like, no. And I have to remind myself again. You can write into us and set us straight if we've got this wrong, because I recall in the pilot she had a partner at home, and I have a vague recollection that at some point she had something in her mind where she was like, "All right, it's over. I have to assume it's over because of the situation."
They've been gone for so long that you have to assume that everybody back in the Alpha Quadrant is.
Presume they're dead.
You're probably not coming back. Like, I mean, and you got to know that you might not ever come back. So you might just be in the Delta Quadrant.
It might make sense.
You're going to live another several decades, but you're not going to get back to the Alpha Quadrant.
Pardon me.
So why not? You can make a Fairhaven. You can make a nice Hawaiian village with a lot of roast pork. You can.
Well, if they had done another episode, it would have been awesome to see Captain Janeway, who probably does have a PhD, so maybe it's okay to call her a doctor, but Captain would be appropriate.
Starfleet Academy is pretty rigorous. So,
yeah, it is.
Might as well be.
Well, and she's good at engineering and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it would have been fun for her to say, all right, now we've hung out in your place. I'm going to take you not to Voyager, because that's kind of boring and lame.
Take you to Risa.
Have her take him to either Risa or to Indiana.
Just fucking Indiana, yeah.
Or something,
He's from 19th century Ireland.
Have him be the one who's out of place.
Yeah.
Maybe he meets her family and he's just like, oh, hello, how's it going? What was it? He's like, I had a cousin who went to America.
Yeah, right.
He saw a lot of strange things, but nothing like this. Now, that's me being offensive because he actually has a proper Irish accent. And being an American Yank, mid-Atlantic Yank, technically living in the South, even though our accents are influenced in some large part by Irish and Scottish peoples who came over here.
That's true. Yeah.
As well as the native peoples and the Africans, people who were enslaved and brought over here. That contributed to our particular accent as well.
Appalachia's got more like
Appalachia's, got a lot of the Scottish. But the long and the short of it is, I apologize. I shouldn't be doing that. The Irish accent, Paddy Christopher Ireland. I shouldn't be doing it because it clearly sounds like a leprechaun, which is offensive, as Colmini could tell you. But again, it's because, for all our Irish listeners out there, we do apologize. We are currently under the influence of a fairly significant amount of fine Irish whiskey. I've got a bucket of Kerrygold Irish butter upstairs, waiting for me to spread upon my toast.
I think we're cool because Irish people get annoyed when Americans are always like, "Oh, I'm part Irish," and it's like, and you were like, "Well, I'm not that Irish, even though my name is Ireland."
My name is Patrick Christopher Ireland.
I didn't mention anything about my Jenks, so I think we're good.
He's like, wait, we're gonna have a scavenger hunt.
My name's Knight.
A new segment is gonna be like track down Jesse Knight's lineage.
Knight is like one of the more Anglo-Saxon names possible, but I do have a fair amount of Irish heritage. But hey, I'm not going to talk about it.
And you're not the guy who's going like hardy.
It's got nothing to do with Star Trek. So
it's that's going to be next week's episode. It's got nothing to do with Star Trek.
It's got Jesse's past.
This is your life. All right, so I don't know if you have anything else. Otherwise, that probably
that's it.
Wraps it up for us. So we've enjoyed this. We do look forward to being joined by Dan again sometime soon, and by his mimicry of Charles Trip Tucker III. We hope you don't mind that we did this we traveled, we took a plane, we actually went to a place called Fairhaven, Ireland, and we've been sitting in a pub.
It's a real place.
Drinking this fine whiskey. That at home is much more expensive. So we hope you don't mind.
Get the salmon.
Yes. Get the salmon, get the blood sausage, and enjoy it. In the meantime, if you are so inclined to get in contact with us, you can reach us at feedback@itsgotstartrek.com. You can also get us on social media at It's Got Star Trek. Very easy. You can just Google it if you're lazy. It'll get you there too. We're on YouTube, same name, and all that jazz. All the major things, Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and Spotify, and this, that, and the other thing. Google Podcasts, wherever you need to find us, you're going to find us. It's not going to be a problem. Just calm the fuck down. It's going to be fine. It's gonna be fucking fine.
It's just a podcast.
It's just a podcast. You're listening to us now. I mean, you're fucking listening to us right now. You found us somehow.
You already listened.
You found us somehow, unless you clicked on some weird random button and you're like, oh, I don't know who these guys are. I desperately have to listen to these people again.
We have to tell this to the people that aren't listening to us. This shouldn't even be on the podcast.
Exactly. This is completely ridiculous.
We could be using this time for more content.
We could. I mean, this is a form of content, but it's a kind of bizarre form of content. Right. You know, it's a waste of time for our listeners, and we understand that. But there's always some reward for those listeners who are willing to stick it out right to the end. I mean, it's not like we put fucking ads on this shit.
Yeah.
So you don't not yet anyway.
There's people that like.
Maybe in the future we will have retroactively inserted ads, and it'll just cut off in random ridiculous places, and it'll be really obnoxious. People, we all know audiences love to be mildly aggravated by the entertainment they consume, and that's the service we're providing to you right here. Non-Star Trek content at the end. We're not even doing an excellent job of telling you our contact information. You've probably forgotten it by this point. And I'm not going to repeat most of it, but I will say if you do want to go to the website, you can go to www.itsgotstartrek.com, and there, in addition to getting all the links to Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and all that stuff, or listening to the podcast or whatever, you can also sort by series.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool feature.
People are digging that, You can be like, oh, yeah, I'm just in the mood to listen to a podcast with a bunch of white dudes talking about Deep Space Nine.
Because everybody has their favorite episode, because there's like the Voyager people, and there's the Deep Space Nine people.
Star Trek, the animated series people.
Yeah, I want to meet those.
I want to meet those people because they got to be cool people, because I love the fucking animated series.
It's really cool. Yeah.
I mean, Lower Decks is amazing, but the animated series has such a combination of charm and bizarreness, and the qualities of the time it was in, and that
70s
crazy ass opening. And by the way, for those of you who've been sleeping on our episodes of the animated series, they tend to get we get tons of listeners, but they tend to that's where it dips. Like, people are like, oh, I don't want to listen to the animated series.
You gotta watch it.
First of all, you gotta watch it.
Is it available?
Yeah,
in other parts of the world? Can the UK?
I'm sure. Yeah, I think it's on Paramount Plus and Netflix, and I think it's pretty easily available for most of the places that have Star Trek should have it. You can write in and tell us, set us straight if we're wrong about that. Okay. If you have trouble getting it in your area, because that's possible. But I do think some people are just turned off by the the animation style or whatever, which is fine. But if you're not giving it a chance, if you don't like it, you don't like it. No worries, it's understandable. But give it a chance.
It's still interesting animation style from like a historical perspective.
I agree.
Like it's filmation.
It's the filmation style, and
so if you dig on He-Man, you can be like, this is like what they did before they.
There's
did
definitely some stuff you can goof on in animation, but at the same time, there's some gorgeous cinematography, for lack of a better term. I mean, there's some shots and framing and use of silhouettes and use of color that I think is really impressive.
Because all you had to do was draw it. So,
but I think even more importantly, those are honestly some of the most entertaining of our podcasts. I mean, we have a real raging good time.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
And we don't even need the the influence of the Jameson cask mates IPA style.
I usually have a Tullamore Dew.
Yeah, Tullamore Dew or Bushmills, or you got your. We're not sponsored by any of these people, but anyway, yeah, YouTube and the Twitter and all that stuff. You can get us there. Website's good. We don't know what we're talking about next week, but you can go to one of those social media places.
I think it'll probably be a TNG.
Could be TNG.
Or a DS9.
Could be Deep Space Nine. We'll find out. We just don't know. Who knows? Maybe we'll do animated series, but we'll let you know on the internet by, I don't know, let's say midweek. Why not? That's a good one.
Yeah.
And if you're listening in the future, you give fuck all about this part of the podcast, because you already can see what's next in the
watched it.
You can see what's next in the list.
You're probably going in like reverse.
You might be working down the list in reverse order, where you might be only listening to particular episodes or whatever. Do whatever you like. It's all good by us.
You could be listening. This could be the only podcast that survives like Armageddon, and like you could just be listening to this one, so there's nothing else to listen to.
There's a non-zero chance that's precisely.
Non-zero?
It's a non-zero chance that this podcast will be the only podcast to survive the apocalypse. Now, it may be that no humans, in fact, survive the apocalypse. So if you are a future alien, from our perspective,
if you have ears,
if you have pointy ears, or some other form of alien, and you've decoded,
if you receive auditory information,
you've decoded the audio information on whatever crystals or whatever they record this,
if you
back
like
this
the
up on in the
English
future.
language.
Yeah, if you don't mind English, you don't mind the
goofy American talk,
goofy American white people perspective. This very narrow, this extremely narrow perspective. If
you live in the suburbs, if you're cool with the suburbs,
if you're cool with the suburbs, and saying words like radical.
It's like, I hear what you're saying, man.
Cowabunga.
Right on, dude. Totally.
Right. So, social media, you'll find out what we're doing next week. So until then, we wish you all the best for whatever it is you may be doing. And we will, at some point next week, at the same time as the podcast dropped this week, next week we'll do the same thing. We'll put it up there on the internet. It's going to go up on the internet. You can download it.
Don't worry, folks.
Just don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine.
Don't worry about a thing. What are you worried about?
So it's gonna be on the. Okay, we'll talk to you next week. Next week is where we'll talk to you. Okay, we I think we need the bill. We need to get the check here and pay for this nonsense. Jesus, we drank a lot of whiskey. How much
check, please. VAT tax.
I don't even know what money they use here.
It's €1.
That's convenient.
Mutton, creamed cabbage, or blood pudding?
Explain.
I'm preparing a traditional Irish meal at the Ox and Lamb this afternoon, and I cannot decide on a main course.
Blood pudding. You can't lose.
Well, that was my first choice, too, but replicating the lamb's intestines, it could be tricky. And every time I try to heat the blood, it coagulates in the milk.
If you'll excuse me, I think I will consult a doctor.